Hi, I'm Rebel Brown, and welcome to the 12 most brainy ways that you can change your thinking to grow your business. You know, for centuries, we were taught that the human brain was this super duper analytical, logical supercomputer. That everything was based on fact and reason and analysis, and that's what separated us from the rest of the critters on the planet. Well, you know what? In the last decade or two, we've learned so much about our brains. And a lot of what we've learned is that, well, we don't always act like that supercomputer that we all assume we are. In fact, our instinctual caveman brain controls a lot of our behavior and actually gets in the way of that logic. And that's why we need to learn how to shift our thinking if we're going to get out of our own way and learn how to change the way we approach things in order to grow our businesses. So let's talk about the 12 most brainy ways we can change our thinking. Okay, here we go. So first, let's talk about how our old brains handle all that information. You see, our old brains take that 2 million bits per second and they manage it by deleting it, categorizing it, distorting it based on our metaprograms. Now, our metaprograms are what we learn in life thanks to, our values, our beliefs, our experiences, our emotions, etc. The challenge is that all those metaprograms are based on yesterday. And in caveman time, when nothing changed, they worked. But in today's world, with change as a constant, everyday thing, it tends to get us stuck in gravity, which is the applying yesterday's news to today and tomorrow. So one of the things we have to do is we have to find a way to stay off autopilot. Now, by that I mean, as we're bringing in information, as you're looking at information about your business, instead of going, oh yeah, that goes there, oh, there's another one of those, oh yeah, that customer's always like that, stop, pause, ask yourself, is this true? What really is here? Take a second look. And by doing that, you engage your brain to actually look at that information rather than using its metaprograms and all its stuff to get through it. That is the first step to shifting your thinking. Now, beyond that, one of the things that happens with categorization that relates to our business is dollars. Our emotions are stored with our memories. So we have a pleasant emotional state, for example, about spending money on a great car. On the other hand, we have a not so pleasant emotional state about spending money on the IRS. So those dollar experiences feel different. Now in business, that's really not a good thing because the dollars we spend in business are equal. Other than the tax implications, let's face it, if we have a cool strategic project versus a not so cool P&L that's dying, we'd rather put money in the cool strategic project. We feel better about it. We look at those dollars as not as big. Well, guess what? All dollars are equal, and we need to make our spending decisions in that frame of mind, not based on the emotional categories our old brain creates. When we get away from those categories and look at our spending rationally, then we make better decisions. Now, another thing that happens thanks to categorization is that we love patterns. That means we tend to look at our business data in the same formats, the same patterns, and guess what? That means we categorize, we delete things, and we don't see all the information. And that gets us in trouble. That's why I suggest to all my clients that you shuffle the deck. Look at the information differently. Instead of looking at your customers this way and your revenue this way, put it on a scattergram. So look at this scattergram. This is the United States of America based on some political leanings. Well, guess what? That doesn't look like the US. You see that differently. By shuffling the way you look at your information, you force your brain to re-engage and see what's really in that information, not just look at the pattern, assume, and move on. Now, the other thing is that goes along with this is that we anchor based on what we see and what our impressions are. For example, when I show you an image of a dove, you probably think of peace. Well, the same thing happens with numbers, only with numbers it tends to be the last numbers we just saw or were involved with. A study showed that people were asked to write down their birthday. Mine would be 04/28/58. Well, then the same study asked those same people immediately to estimate the size of Russia. And guess what? 95% of them used numbers from their birth date, all the numbers from their birth date jumbled up to estimate the size. That's anchoring. And the thing is, that gets in our way if we're making number decision, making estimates, because we're going to estimate based on the last numbers we just saw. So take some time to clear your brain. Walk outside. Look at something that's imagery. Look at something different. Watch a video. That resets that anchoring, resets those numbers so that now you have a clear brain for figures. And speaking of estimates, another thing that happens is our survival instinct tells us to estimate best case. We're going to look at the best case. We're going to look at the potential. We're going to forecast our sales numbers based on what we really and truly think would be true in our best state. That explains why we sit in sales meetings, starting with a forecast this big and whittling it down into something we think is real. Well, flip that. Be a bear with your estimates. Instead of starting with, oh my God, this could happen, start with your worst case scenario and then add in logical extensions and expansions. Guess what? You'll hit your numbers, you'll exceed your numbers, and isn't that a better management problem than trying to make up for that lost forecast? Be a bear. Now, another aspect of our brain is our herd brain. Our brain actually rewards us for being in conformity with the herd and their beliefs. Whatever our groupthink is, our brain wants us to agree with it. That's a problem because how do you innovate when everybody's thinking the same way? That's why it's really important as a leader to lead away from the herd. Take the minority approach. Come up with a different idea from the herd. Support a minority approach. That gets another thing engaged, which is we want to follow our leaders. So get that balance so that instead of everybody thinking in groupthink, they see you thinking outside of the herd and they'll do the same. You'll get more innovation. Now also, our brain rewards us for conformity, but it also sends an error message when we disagree with the herd. So we're actually programmed not to be different, which is why it's important for your business to reward difference visibly. Reward people who think out of the box. Reward people who do things differently when it's a positive way. That way, that reward will draw people to see, wow, it's okay to be different, and you'll stimulate even more innovation. Now, because of our herd brain, we also think that we know what others want. That's the real kiss of death when it comes to our buyers, because you know what? Our value is in the eyes of the beholder, and the only beholder that matters is your buyer. So unless you're spending the money on your products, stop having those meetings internally deciding what's true and get outside. Get fresh perspectives. Listen to your buyers. Listen to other partners in your market. Talk to people in other industries about your business and look at what they're doing. This goes back to finding what's right and modeling it. The more fresh perspectives you can put into your brain, the more you can open up yourself to options. And those options are the seeds for innovative thinking. And that's where value lives, in the innovation. Now, I want to talk about what I believe is the number one limitation of our brain, and that's our status quo bias. We are programmed to stay with what's comfortable and known today. That makes sense to a caveman, because why would you go and risk changing something when you have a safe cave? Well, guess what? That's not true today anymore. So one of the first things we have to do is we have to find a way to get beyond that. And I'm telling you, the way to do it is to get antsy. Because by being uncomfortable, by telling ourselves that our status quo situation is not safe, not comfortable, in fact, making it a threat, we trigger that old brain to look around and say, wow, we're not comfortable here. We have to find another way, and innovation is right behind that trigger. So instead of being comfortable with the way you've always done it, whenever you catch yourself holding on to something that, oh, I've always done it this way, I'm not going to let it go. Let go of it. Make it uncomfortable. Make the way you've always done it feel really uncomfortable, and watch your brain go out and find better ways of thinking and doing. Now, one of the other things that happens because of status quo and the survival brain is that we focus on the problem. I mean, let's face it, for caveman, the consequences of missing a threat were a lot more than the consequences of missing a new opportunity. I mean, you were going to get eaten like by a dinosaur. So that comes forward with us, and we focus on the problems in our business. The challenge with that is if all you're doing is taking what you did 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago and fixing the problems, it may very well be that what you need to do is do something totally different because what you're fixing doesn't work at all. But you won't make that shift because you're focused on the problems. That's why I tell everybody, look for what's working. And this is what I talked about a minute ago. Model what's working within your business, within your partners, outside of your business and your industry. Look for things that are working and see how you can apply them to your business. That flips the way your brain works. So now you're looking for opportunities. You're looking for new opportunities, new ways of doing things. And you can still focus on some of the problems because there are always problems to be fixed. But this will stimulate your brain to look outside of the problems for new options. And that's, again, where value and success lives. Now, another aspect of status quo is that we assume we're right. The status quo is here. We assume what we're doing is right. And what we do is when we go out to look for research and information, we look for the data that will prove ourselves right. Here's what I suggest. Look for information to prove yourself wrong. Make that assumption and then go find all the data you can to make yourself wrong. By doing that, number one, if you can prove yourself wrong, well, you just saved yourself time, money, and effort. Number two, if you can't prove yourself wrong, you know you're on a pretty good path. And number three, as you're out there looking at all that data with a slant toward yourself being wrong, you're open to new options, and you may find an even better way that you never thought of out there while you're doing the research. So that's the way to get past that status quo data and proving ourselves right. And finally, I want to talk about, if you don't do anything else, this is the number one thing that we can do to change our thinking. As I have worked with turnarounds for the last 20 years, as I go in and dive into why do you do this, where is this, etc., the number one response I get is, well, that's the way we've always done it. Wrong! You know what? That is a status quo bias in spades, and the way you've always done it is the reason for the mess we're in. And look around at our country and everywhere else in our world, the way we've always done it's got us in trouble. That's why I suggest to clients that you question everything, because by questioning, you open your brain to new options. So anytime you feel that I've got to do it this way or no way I'm changing it, stop and ask yourself, why do I believe that? Where's the evidence that that's true? Is there a better way? Have I looked for a better way? What would be the better way? Those questions open you to start to seek other options. And that's how you shift your thinking to find more opportunity. Now, why should you change your thinking? Well, you know, as Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survive. It's those that are most adaptable to change. And if you look all around us, market leaders thrive because they continuously and consciously adapt. And that's what we need to learn to do more of. And you know what? You can do it now because you have the 12 most brainy ways to change your thinking and grow your business. And guess what? All of this, it works for your personal life too.